All right, everybody, here we are for episode 111. 111 episodes. Talking movies.
Yay!
Just seems like an important number because it's 3 ones. We are reviewing the brand new Netflix film called Do Revenge with Maya Hawke and Camille Mendes. And so we are going to kind of talk teenage revenge movies. We're gonna mention some other ones that we felt that they were inspired by when we watched this film, because it is very much a mixture of 80s and 90s teen revenge and even early 2000s teen revenge films. And I think they pay
Obviously,
a lot.
with sorry,
Go ahead.
jumping the gun. I'm so excited to talk about this. Anything with revenge in the title was probably a nod. I try to stay away from anything like that, like Revenge of the Nerds would pseudo fall into this, but we've talked about that before. Stuff like that. So I made a conscious effort. So
yes. I think too. So like this kind of movie, I think you could always point back to Heathers as being the number one of this genre. Like, it kind of started it. It was very much a dark comedy about teenagers in high school and rich kids, and being the not as rich kid and having to kind of go along and be popular, that kind of thing. But I do want to make a mention of a movie I've talked about a bunch of times, and it's a woman's revenge movie, and this movie deals with some of that as well. And it's The Legend of Billie Jean. It's this great 80s film where you have your hero Billie Jean is accused of shooting a guy who tried to rape her. Now all the details are not out there yet, and then as soon as they start to come out, like, she becomes a folk hero. And the
Billie
revenge
Jean will not be his lover.
Yes, exactly. I think most people think of that when you hear Legend of Billie Jean. But this movie, it's always been a favorite of mine from the 80s. It stars the girl from Supergirl, the movie. I'm drawing a blank on her name right now, and I don't have the... here, let me pull it up real quick while we're talking about it, because I give her credit. But this has always been one of my favorite, like, 80s films.
I wanted to touch on it while you're looking that up. The Heathers thing, especially with the way they're dressed in the gaudy uniforms, it makes me think of just like that awful yellow checkered blazer with the big shoulder pads that Winona Ryder has. I'm like, oh my god!
It's very Heathers. The clothes are very Clueless as well, even though that's not a revenge movie. That's another feeling I got out of Do Revenge.
As if.
Yes. All right, so Helen Slater and Christian Slater, no relation, were both in Legend of Billie Jean. They played brother and sister. It's a great movie, and if people haven't seen it, it's kind of been one of those ones that it's been finding more of an audience now, I think, as people realize how much of like a feminist film that it is. And it definitely, I think, inspired something like Heathers, which obviously went for a very much darker side of this. So I kind of wanted to go through like a little history lesson of where this movie came from. We're not going to go deep on Heathers because we did that on our extended podcast with all of our guests, because that was the movie I chose to talk about. But Heathers is definitely, I think, an inspiration here. Winona Ryder, you could either point out to Maya Hawke or Camille Mendes that's who she is. Heathers is just, it's a classic, another Christian Slater one, and to me, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. All right, so in 1999, there was this movie, and I know I briefly talked about it because I watched it somewhat recently on here. It's called Jawbreaker, and Jawbreaker would, if Heathers and Mean Girls, Wayne, are like the top of the echelon of these type of movies, something like Jawbreaker is like their trashy cousin. So Jawbreaker stars Rose McGowan, let's see, Rebecca Gayheart, Julie Benz, Judy Greer. Same setup as Heathers, except the girls, all three girls, end up killing like the main Heather, if you will, in Jawbreaker. With it, they shove a giant jawbreaker in her throat as a prank, and they put her in the trunk of a car, and she chokes on it and dies. And so then they have to basically cover it up. They make it look like I can't remember if they make it look like suicide or make it look like that she just like had aspirations and whatever, she died or whatever. And it then becomes like the revenge part of it comes in from like Rebecca Gayhart's character, who's more like the Winona Ryder of the group, who doesn't want to be involved in this. And they start, Rose McGowan's character is the crazy one, and she starts, trying to like basically keep everybody in line, threatening to kill other people. What reminded me a lot of Maya Hawke in Do Revenge is Judy Greer in this one, because Judy Greer is the very nerdy girl who they turn into the very hot Jawbreaker. I forget what they're called themselves. They don't call themselves Jawbreakers, because that's a Jawbreaker is how someone dies. But she becomes like their new hot friend, who was not like that, and becomes very bitchy and a very different person because she now looks hot. So
very plastic-esque.
Yes, exactly. We'll get to that one in a minute here, obviously, because there are definitely huge connections there. So yeah, Jawbreaker has more of a kind of like Heathers. It has a very much more darker ending. There isn't like murder at the end, but like people end up arrested and in jail and stuff. Where Heathers, Christian Slater gets blown up, and it ends up with Winona Ryder smoking a cigarette in the hallway, looking like she just got exploded. So Jawbreaker, it's definitely lesser than all the movies I think that we're going to talk about today, but it's something that has to be talked about if you're going to talk this topic, because I think it does fit in there. It does have its fans, because it is, again, people like trashy movies, even when they're bad, and usually they prefer them to be bad. So I think this definitely fits right into that. Wayne, do you remember Jawbreaker? It was popular kind of when we grew up, just because of Rose McGowan. I don't know if you had seen it or not.
No, I don't really recall it off the top of my head. I don't honestly know if I've ever seen it. I wear my shame. I think one of the ones that I wanted to, if we talked about it or not, this had some Cruel Intentions vibes.
Yes.
Again, with the the well-off children and thinking they can do and say whatever they want.
And Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Buffy is in this.
Yep. So no, Cruel Intentions. That was
Ryan Phillippe pull up in his little Porsche Roadster. So
you could almost essentially say that it is Cruel Intentions, with the exception that there isn't like a major death in the movie. But it follows that very closely. It obviously helps that Sarah Michelle Gellar is in it. It flips it a little bit, as the guy is the evil one in this scenario, and the two girls are the ones that are kind of fighting with each other and stuff in Do Revenge. So it does end up a little different, but it is very much, if you like Cruel Intentions, then you really need to go watch Do Revenge, because it has a lot of similarities. And I definitely think you'll like them. Cruel Intentions, I mean, that, the music, again, and what this movie does too, Wayne, is the music. Like every time I heard a song, and I had subtitles on, so it would tell me who was singing the song. I'm like, oh, okay. So like every song was a big star, a lot from today, but then they threw in some songs from back in the day as well. But with Cruel Intentions, I mean, I always think of the music when I think of that movie, and of course the kiss scene between Selma Blair and Sarah Michelle Gellar. So I must admit, I did have the Cruel Intentions Sarah Michelle Gellar poster on my wall as a teenager, and as I think most men or most boys our age probably did. Or I'm just weird, because she was kind of a bitch in that movie. but yeah, it was just, I'll admit that like Cruel Intentions is probably on the more positive side of like a trashy film, but it is still somewhat kind of soapy and you know what I mean? It's very much like a soap opera kind of thing, but it's still really good. It's a really good movie. Wayne, what are your first initial thoughts of Cruel Intentions from what you remember?
Man, I just was so hyped. This is one of the first like teen drama, not dramedies, but just drama that I remember them hyping the shit out of for like 3-4 months or more before it came out, and just went and saw this opening night. Went on a first date, blind date,
nice.
And just remember being it very, very, I don't want to use the term erotic, but very much, hey, how you doing scenes. And it's like just being enthralled and just, just like and then being like, oh, wait, are they brother? And they're not related, right? Like, ew, in some scenes. But ew, but it's also like, well, I mean. Sorry, it is what it is. It's like, hey, not my sister.
You're right. Yeah.
Drawback.
Um, yeah, it definitely, I think, as teenagers, obviously it was aimed at a
Mhm.
certain feeling. I think, to get us horny, I guess would be essentially what the goal of the movie was, and to be entertained. Um, when you get, you get Ryan Phillippe, we are talking about Sarah Michelle Gellar. Reese Witherspoon was in this movie as the other third lead character.
Yeah.
Selma Blair was one of the characters in this film as well. She did a really good job. She would go
Yeah,
on to be like
obviously a time before revenge porn was a thing. Obviously, if you remember the
yes.
very beginning with Tara Reid.
Yes. Yeah. It's there's a lot in this movie that is uncomfortable, I think. Um Ryan Phillippe's character definitely goes on a redemptive arc, to be a better person. And I think that's a theme in all of these movies.
Yeah,
Whether
but
you look
be a
at
better
Heather,
person because you realize you're being a douche, not because you
right.
know all of a sudden in love.
Right, exactly. I think that that's important too. Is the ones that we're not going to talk about are the ones where like, oh, well, love made me better. Like all these what these movies have in common today is that they had an epiphany that, oh shit, I was being a complete douchebag, and maybe I should be a nicer person. And it could be, in Cruel Intentions, you could argue that Reese Witherspoon made him want to be a nicer person, but it wasn't just because of her love that did it. It was because he realized what he was putting other people through. And I think that's a theme throughout this discussion here today. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a good movie, man. I think maybe it gets a bad rap. It is technically like a remake or an adaptation of what the hell, I keep wanting to say Les Mis, but that's not it. It's the one fucking Malkovich was in it. I forget. Oh, Dangerously Liaisons. That's what it is. It's basically a modern remake of that story. Um, but like I said, we'll get to our review of Do Revenge soon. But I think these two films are definitely very similar, so it's important that we talk about Cruel Intentions just as we get to the end here, or towards the end. We're not at the end yet, so don't worry. It's only been 13 minutes. All right, so the next one that I want to bring up, and I think it's one that often gets brought up when you talk Heathers, because it was written or directed by the brother of the writer of Heathers. It's Mean Girls, and it's directed by Mark Waters. Daniel Waters, his brother, wrote Heathers. Written by Tina Fey, starring Lindsay Lohan, Rachel McAdams, Tim Meadows, Anna Gasteyer, Amy Poehler, Tina Fey. It has a great Lacey Chabert is in it. Amanda Seyfried is in it before they were. Chabert was already famous, but Seyfried wasn't famous yet. Jonathan Bennett. See if there's anybody else that. Lizzie Kaplan, who I'm a huge fan of. Daniel Francis plays Damien. See if there's anybody that was in it that's now famous. I don't really see anybody. Yeah. So, Mean Girls follows the story of Caddy, often pronounced Katie in the film because they don't want to listen to her. Her name's Caddy, and she is the new girl. She grew up in Africa, where her families were like they were like missionaries or something. They moved around a lot in Africa, so she grew up there. She comes to America and she has to be you go to school. So it's her first time in a school with American kids. So there's a lot to learn. I think one thing these movies all have in common is that teenagers are assholes. And it's not wrong because we both went to high school. We get it.
yep.
Teenagers can and will be assholes no matter what generation you're talking about. And in this particular one, you get mid 2000s. Rachel McAdams plays the leader of what is they're described as the Mean Girls. That's their clique. Her, Lacey Chabert, and Amanda Seyfried. They take Caddy under their wings, and they basically it's actually another very similar thing to the movie we're going to talk about today. It's like reverse revenge, where you have Caddy's going to be a mean girl, but only because they want to get revenge on Regina George for the shit that she's done. But then, of course, Caddy gets involved in being popular, and that goes to her head. So there's a lot of that going on. Lindsay Lohan, this is back when everybody liked her a lot, and her star was rising. She does a really good job, I think, as does Lizzie Kaplan as her scheming best friend who helps her plan all of this. Rachel McAdams is great as well as being the real bitch of this movie. I think we never really got to see her play this role again. She's mostly played likable people since this movie.
Yeah.
But she did a really good job in this.
The George thing sticks with her, man. Like I was like, oh wait, is it possible she's gonna be? No, she's nice. Damn it.
Well, and it's funny too because a lot of that's made it into the meme culture of today. There's so much. There's gifs. There's memes. It's all from Mean Girls. A lot of it revolves around Regina George, because it's just a very memorable movie. Very memorable quotes. Tim Meadows was always one of my favorite parts of this movie. Is the principal. When he's like opens up the discussion to all the women in the gym, and he's like, "All right, let's get started. Is anyone get something to say?" And she's like, "I have a really heavy flow." He's like, "All right, why don't you take this?" Like right to Tina Fey because he doesn't want to deal with it. So I really enjoy Tim Meadows. And then when they go around to like, if you've been victimized by Regina George, all the teachers and him, the principal, all raise their hands. I thought that was really funny.
Right.
So yeah, it's a really clever movie. Go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, I remember reading something recently that Amanda Seyfried said in regards to just the backlash or negative attention she got for this movie. Like men would come up to her and ask if they could see if it's raining. Obviously, she would squeeze herself to, the character would predict the rain by touching her breast.
ESPN, which is a funny part of the movie. But I will say, it probably did not do good for destigmatizing blonde girls and making them, because she does play a dumb blonde, which I think is, obviously the joke. But in defense of that, Regina George's character is blonde and she's very smart and evil. So, so there is that too.
Yeah, same thing with Lacey Chabert. If she would have just stopped trying to make fetch work. That's funny. I look at myself as we're doing this podcast, and I see my 40-year-old self quoting a movie from 18 years ago now, and it's like, oh, you old boomer, years ago, shut up.
That even when it was made, was not made for us because we were already in our 20s at that point. So yeah, right. Yeah, it was. I was 21. You were what, 22 probably? Because it was 04.
Yep, right around there.
So yeah, so I mean, definitely a movie that made for us. But like we've talked about before, coming of age films are great for all generations. I think people can all relate to them because we're always coming of age. We're always coming into a new part of ourselves. And I think movies like Mean Girls and Heathers, that's why they stay around, because people are always feeling like that. You're always feeling like the outcast, whether you get a new job, you move to a new city, you always feel like you have to kind of be a different version of yourself in order for people to like you. And I think that's why people relate to these movies, because of that, because it's just very much in tune with most people. So yeah, Mean Girls definitely. I mean, if you haven't seen Mean Girls, you're living under a fucking rock, man. I mean, this movie it's great. It's fun. It's always on Netflix or Hulu or wherever. It's always streaming. So I recommend people watch this and just keep watching it because it's really good. All right. So next, Wayne, I'm going to talk about one that I'm pretty sure you probably haven't seen. Maybe you have, but I'm going to guess not. It's called Thoroughbreds. It's from 2017. It's got a great young cast. It's directed and written by Corey Finley. It stars Olivia Cooke, Anya Taylor-Joy. It's one of the last films of Anton Yelchin. It stars Paul Sparks and Francie Swift as well. All right, so the plot of this movie, in suburban Connecticut, upper-class high schooler Amanda euthanizes her crippled horse with a knife, resulting in charges of animal cruelty. Sometime later, Amanda arrives at the home of the more popular and academically inclined Lily. The girls were previously best friends but grew apart after the death of Lily's father. They meet under the pretense of hanging out and having a casual tutoring session, but Amanda knows that her mother has paid Lily to socialize with Amanda. Lily denies being paid, but Amanda, who does not experience emotions due to an unspecified mental disorder, is unfazed. Lily meets with Amanda again, this time voluntarily, and they rekindle their friendship. Okay, so this movie involves around murder, revenge, sexual molestation, and it's a comedy.
So, all involving a horse. Hi-oh!
Yeah. No, there are no, not all involving yours. There's a lot darker things at play here. There's this. I don't really want to explain it because I want people to discover this movie if they haven't seen it. Anya Taylor Joy, by the way, is amazing. She's an amazing young actress. I think anybody who's seen her work would agree. So if you haven't seen this movie and you're like, oh, I'm a big fan of hers, definitely watch it. Obviously, like I said, it's a dark movie. Olivia Cook from uh, Ready Player One is one of the leads in that. She's in this. She's really good too. She plays the one. She's has no emotion, and it's a kind of a great character to play. I think where Anya Taylor Joy has like all the emotion in this in this movie. Um, it's really I again I don't want to give too much away because it's really fucking good and Anton Yelchin gives a great performance and again just sad my wife and I were just talking about him this morning because we were watching Wrath of Khan and we were talking about the new Star Treks and just the fact that he was the first of that cast to die and perish and he died right I think in 2016 or 17 and this movie came out in 17 I know it was after his death
Yeah, and just the way that he lost his life
yeah it
too,
was
like,
very sad
horrible.
very sad very sad. But this is, I think, a good role for him. He plays like like a drug dealer who they try to get involved in their conniving plan. Who's just kind of like, whoa, dude, no, I don't want to do that. Very, very much how a drug dealer would be. I thought he did a really good job. He was always a good actor. And it fits right in with Heathers. It's just as dark as Heathers. So if you think Heathers is too dark for you, then don't watch this movie. This one I definitely think is much more of a comparison because of how dark it is. It's a great movie. I think people should watch it. If you haven't seen it, definitely hunt it down. It's called
Mhm.
Thoroughbreds. Great young cast, just a really good movie. Um, yeah. So I mean I got some other ones I want to mention. Wayne, did you want to? Is there anything else you wanted to focus on before I mentioned just other movies that are similar?
No, I think I'm good. I definitely wanted to focus on Cruel Intentions. We gave that some love today.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, obviously, we could talk about like we talked at the top of the show. We could talk revenge movies,
Yep.
for hours. But focusing on like teen high school stuff like this, I think we're good with what we covered so far, on my end at least.
Yes. So I'll give some other recommendations. Hard Candy, which is a movie starring Elliot Page, and it is a film about a young girl who traps a pedophile. It's really fucking good. It's very dark. Her and
Mm.
Patrick Wilson are in it. They're so good together. It's such a great movie. Definitely recommend that one. Photocopier is a foreign one that's on Netflix. That one is kind of has a somewhat of a sad ending, but it does have what could be a positive outlook if there were to be more to the movie. It's this movie. I thought it was a horror film when Rebecca put it on, but it's really it's an emotional drama about kind of like Max in what we're going to talk about in Do Revenge, going around sleeping with a bunch of women, posting it online, sending pictures, that kind of stuff, and they get their revenge kind of at the end of the movie a little bit. Really good. The Craft. The Craft is another one and Craft is mentioned. They mention the Craft in Do Revenge, so it's definitely an inspiration. Um,
It is.
the Craft, you think it's these witches who want to get revenge on the boys that have done them wrong, and that definitely I think speaks to what this movie that we're going to talk about um, does. So
What
definitely,
up, witches?
yes, exactly. um, all right, so movies I thought of while watching uh, Do Revenge. So these are just films that either musically, like they play Paranoia, whatever the fuck that song's called, from Disturbing Behavior. So that definitely made me think Disturbing Behavior. Clueless, definitely the girls are a lot like the characters in Clueless, even though Clueless is not a revenge film. 10 Things I Hate About You. There's a lot of that, I think, involvement here as well. Tragedy Girls, which is one I've talked about, is a movie about two girls who want to be serial killers who are being hunted by an actual serial killer. So that's a really good one that I think people should watch. Easy A, The Duff. These are high school movies that are very similar in tone, not as dark. I would say they're more inspired by Mean Girls than they are something like Heathers, but they definitely fit into this realm. Some Kind of Wonderful, one of my favorite '80s films.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a typical, not revenge or anything, but again, it has like that kind of she's all that vibe where it's like, people are different, and you got the rich people. The poor guy wants to date the rich girl, but then the poor girl likes the poor guy, so it's kind of this whole love triangle type thing. And then
Yes, you are a stupid bet.
what?
Yes, you are a stupid bet.
Yeah.
Am I a bet? Am I a stupid bet?
um, and then Moxie. Moxie is one that's directed by Amy Poehler that is on Netflix. It's about a bunch of girls that stand up to uh, men who are, sexually assaulting them and abusing them, and it's very kind of heavy movie, but it's pretty good. I enjoyed that one. It was good to watch. All right, so we're gonna get into our review
of the week.
Good, that's good. I like it. All right, so if you couldn't tell already, and Wayne and I think are going to differ a little bit on this movie, but this movie was something I completely vibed with. I loved it. It reminded me, all the movies we just talked about are movies that I really like a lot, so it reminded me a lot of those movies. Just the cover box is incredible. And yes, I called it a cover box instead of a poster because I used to work at Blockbuster, people. All right, so Do Revenge, directed by Jennifer Caton Robinson, written by Celeste Ballard and Jennifer Caton Robinson, starring Camille Mendez and Maya Hawke, as well as Austin Abrams, who plays Max, Rish Shaw, Talia Ryder, Ava Capri, Jonathan Davis, not the guy from Korn, Maya Rafiko, Paris Barrick, Alicia Bowe, who I wanted to mention, the great Sophie Turner, Wayne.
Yeah.
Great.
That's one thing that I noticed. Okay, wait. I know her from this. I know her from that.
Right,
Obviously.
yeah.
Sophie Turner is Sansa. And
Yes,
Alicia Bowe from 13 Reasons
yes,
Why.
exactly. I was good. And she actually looked very different. It took me, when I saw that was her, I was like, wait a minute, what?
Like, yeah. No, I caught a glimpse of a facial expression that she made.
For me, it's her voice. I'll always remember her voice. That was
Abrams was actually on The Walking Dead for a couple of seasons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He was on seasons 5 and 6. He was the son of the love interest of Rick when they're at Alexandria.
Okay, so we got to see him get killed, right?
Yes.
So at least it's cathartic in that movie. Because he is a giant piece of shit in this film. All right, so Do Revenge starts off with Camille Mendez. She is think Some Kind of Wonderful, from the other side of the tracks kind of thing, but she got a scholarship to this very rich, very white school. Even though there are other non-white characters in this film, like Alicia Bowe and stuff, and the guy that plays Elliot. So they have a good diverse cast, but they're all very rich except for her, and she is convinced by her boyfriend Max to send her a sexy video because she's going to be going away for the summer, and he wants something to remind him of her. And the video then gets leaked online, and everyone's seeing it, and she feels embarrassed, and obviously she thinks he did it. Now he denies it, and she then vows basically to never let her guard down again, and she's very angry and very mean most of this movie. But I think there are moments of levity where we get to see who she really is, and that's kind of what the moments I like a lot in this movie is when she does let her guard down, which is something that, again, the character does not want to do. She ends up meeting Maya Hawke at this tennis camp, and Maya Hawke claims that Sophie Turner sent this video around. So Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones has a very small role in this movie, but she does have some good scenes, though. There are some definitely good moments in it from her, even though she's only in a couple scenes. She gets her kicked out for cocaine use, which is a very funny moment earlier and later in the film when they come back.
So I don't even know what cocaine looks like.
She doesn't know what it looks like. Her friend is great too, basically repeating everything that she says. So they, Maya Hawke and her become fast friends, and then they hatch this plan. Maya Hawke tells her the story of a girl who was mean to her and painted her as like a predator, and she doesn't like that, so she wants to get revenge on her person, and she wants to, and
Mhm.
Camille Mendes' character wants to get revenge on her people. So they
Mhm.
vow to do each other's revenge, hence
Right.
do revenge, which is said several times throughout the movie. Go ahead, Wayne.
The interesting things, you've got the Camille Mendes character, Drea.
Mhm.
Then you've got Megan, played by Paris Burlick, and then character Montana,
Yep.
Maya Refico. I had trouble distinguishing who was who for a little bit there. Obviously, Camille, being the main,
The main one
character.
is easier, but the other
But
two, yes.
like, hold on, are they related? What's going on here? It was like a mind mess, if you will. I'm like,
I think
I don't know why I focused on that and kind of drift away from the story, but
I think that was intentional. That whenever they mentioned Megan and Montana, that one, their names are both starting with M's, and two, they looked very similar. That I think
right,
you were supposed to kind of be confused on who they were, because it replicates the idea that when you have one of those girl groups like that, they all look very similar. The only one when Drea was with them, she looked like them. When she was apart, she didn't. But obviously, Alicia Bowe was the one that stood out. I think, and nothing. It just she was the leader of the group, so she was the one that was kind of a little different every time you saw her. She was dressed usually a little different or a little better
yeah,
than the rest of them. But she so um there's this big twist in this movie. I don't want to give it away because it'll kind of like I really liked the twist. I mean, I did and I didn't, only because it makes you feel a bit emotional about what's going on throughout this movie and what you've watched so
yeah.
far. It does have a very much a I won't say a positive ending, but a happy ending, and that I enjoyed as well. Um, you're gonna say
Yeah,
something?
I like the twist, but I think their resolve was a little bit hard to believe for
There
me.
was so what I will say with while I love this movie and I'm going to give it a high rating just because of how it made me feel. I will agree with you. They did wrap up some things rather quickly. I think part of that was this movie is 2 hours long, and it's
Yeah,
probably a movie that you probably could have done in an hour and a half. I liked it. I liked the length of it. It didn't bother me. But that what it did was because they probably had more stuff that they left on the cutting room floor. It did leave some of the things they wrapped up. They wrapped up rather quickly. But I think what worked for me, Wayne, the reason that it didn't bother as much while I watched the movie was because it gave you the outcome that you wanted. You wanted it to be a happier outcome. So the fact that even though it happened very quickly, it still didn't bother me. And I think they added some voiceover moments because the other thing too, if you don't like voiceover in movies, this movie is told through two different people's voiceovers. So
yeah.
it could get a little confusing. Rebecca had fallen asleep at one point. And she's like, "Is this all voiceover?" And it was actually a part where she was actually talking to Maya Hawke's character, but they were showing other things on screen while she was talking. So,
Right.
yeah, like I said, I love this movie. It definitely, for me, it reminded me of Mean Girls and Heathers, which are two other movies I really love. Now I know, Wayne, when it comes to rich people problems, you tend to not gravitate towards those movies as much, and I get that. I understand that. I am also not rich, and I didn't have a lot of these problems that these people have.
I wanted a full Carrie ending just because you know what? That's what they all deserve. Screw it.
I
And then,
agree. There could have been more murder. If there was
yeah,
none, there could have been more.
yeah, and it had a very Kissing Booth esque, feel to it. And I don't know.
I don't like
Like I
that
said before,
comparison.
it's jealous envy. It's like, oh look, poor you.
I don't like that comparison because this Kissing Booth movies, while enjoyable, are trash. This movie's not trash.
I'm saying esque. There's an esque at the end, so it saves my.
You saved it, okay. I think on the surface it appears to be one of those movies, but I think the characters are a lot deeper than that. They're a lot deeper than, to me anyway. They're a lot deeper than, and I'm talking about the main characters, Drea and Nora, played by Maya Hawke and Camille Mendes. There's a lot more depth to them, I think, as opposed to those Kissing Booth movies. That which, like I said, this is why I like it. I kind of relate emotionally, I guess, to that's why I've always liked movies like Heathers and The Craft, because I understand it, I guess, to an extent, even though I haven't had a lot of these issues. I feel like I get them, and on the inside, if you will. I'm revealing a lot about myself here, but it's just it worked for me, man. That's all I can say. I mean, it worked for me. I know it didn't work for you, but it worked for me, and I
You can
definitely
still wear pink on Wednesdays. It's fine.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I needed to hear that. So yeah, for me, honestly, Wayne, it's a 9 out of 10 for me. I really enjoyed myself with this movie. I had a great time. I think other people that like the movies we talked about will enjoy it as well. It definitely is, a movie for the younger generation to have something like Heathers or Mean Girls that we had. And I think it's something that young people should watch and kind of learn from, too. Just be nicer. That's what I like to tell people is, when people call me too woke or whatever, I'm like, you know what? I'm just not an asshole. And that's basically how I try to be in my life. I try not to be an asshole. So,
Yeah.
and I think these movies do that. Like, hey, you know what? Just be your fucking self, man. And if yourself is a piece of shit, then try to be better. Be less of a piece of shit. And that's what Max could learn, because Max is a giant piece of shit in this movie. So yeah, I don't know, Wayne, what are your final thoughts or your rating and stuff? I know, like I said, I know you weren't as big of a fan.
Yeah, I'm at right around a 6.5. I mean, I enjoyed the story. I admit I did not expect the twist to go the way it did, so that was nice.
Yep.
But overall, I was like, I don't know, it just didn't hit for me.
I will say this too, and we didn't really talk. Maya Hawke and Camille Mendes are fantastic together.
Yep.
I would be a fan of more movies or a TV show where they get to act with each other, because I thought they were both really good.
Yeah, especially if there was like this sci-fi thing where there's like an alternate dimension and it's like,
So what you're saying is they need to cast Camille Mendes as Maya Hawke's friend in Stranger Things season 5.
I was gonna say, yeah, we could give her a cool number to go by and powers.
I get it now. I get it. All right, so you guys can watch Do Revenge on Netflix right now. I say go watch it. Yeah, and that's it. So Wayne, anything this week that you watched that you want to talk about?
Well, football started up again, and I begrudgingly added to my list of shows that I'm watching. I started watching Ballers again. Dwayne The Rock Johnson, John David Washington, the guy from Hot Tub Time Machine, whom I love. I can never remember his name.
What do we say? Oh, God, Corddry, Rob Corddry.
Corddry, thank you, Rob Corddry Pants.
Yes.
Just very, very interesting. I like the real gritty inside behind things. Very much has a Any Given Sunday feel to it. Not all fluff and look at all this. It gives you the real insight about, what these, very young, very rich athletes experience. So,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. That making my way through House of the Dragon. Episode 4 was, very, very intriguing. A lot of stuff going on there. A little bit of incest, it's cool. It's Game of Thrones, to expect.
It's cool. I don't know if cool's the right word, but I get what you mean. Expected.
That's where I am. That's where I'm living right now.
All right. So let me hear. I'm going through my letterboxed here. So this last week I watched some movies, obviously. Let's see here. And a TV show as well. So See For Me on Shudder, it was okay. I wish it was better. There's a twist in it that I really didn't care for. The big thing about it is that it's about a blind person and it stars a blind actress. So I thought, obviously, again, inclusion and stuff like that, very cool. It's not a terrible movie. It's just wasn't something I was really psyched about afterwards. See For Me, it's on Shudder. I watched the original I think it was 1960 version of Little Shop of Horrors. Directed by Roger Corman, stars Jack Nicholson, but Jack Nicholson in a very tiny role as the crazy guy in the crazy patient at the dentist. Interesting movie. I still prefer the musical, even though I don't like musicals, and this one's not a musical. I prefer the musical over this. Still fun movie, and just cool to see how they did it. And interesting point of it too, Wayne, because I watched it with Joe Bob. Movie was shot in 2 days back in 1960. And only because Roger Corman had previously shot a movie in 5 days, some guy was like, bro, you can't do a movie in 2 days. And he's like, fuck you, watch me. And he did.
That is insane to think.
Yep. Especially back then. Think about the equipment and stuff and what you had to lug around and just the where they had to get the locations and stuff. Insane. All right, we rewatched Can You Keep a Secret, which I swear is a very nice rom-com on Netflix. It's not a Netflix original, but it stars Alexandra Daddario and the new Superman guy. That guy.
Tyler Hitchin,
Yeah, that guy.
the worst Superman ever to down the Cape. Yes.
Yes. I watched Alligator, which is a 1980 horror film with Robert Forster, which is about it takes place in Chicago. An alligator flushed down the toilet, then starts terrorizing Chicago. It's also slightly mutated as well because, of course, it's the 80s. There's some crazy scientists doing experiments on animals that somehow the alligator eats and then becomes mutated himself.
The turtle's leftover mutagen. Gotcha.
Yes, exactly. Basically, fun movie. I followed it up with Alligator 2. Not as fun. Made 10 years later in 1990. It's okay. Nothing special. Same, different mutated alligator. Different company poisoning the sewer line. Sins of Her Mother is a really good murder documentary on Netflix that just dropped. Blackbird is a great serial killer show on Apple Plus. It's a limited series with Taron Egerton, one of the last performances of Ray Liotta, and it stars also along with Taron. Hold on, let me get his name here. Paul Walker Hauser, who's an incredible character actor. Greg Kinnear is also in it. Sebedi Mohafi, she plays the lead FBI agent. Robert Wisdom is in it as well. He's a character actor you guys would all probably recognize. And then yesterday I got to the theater to see Pearl, which is the prequel to the movie X, which came out earlier this year. Pearl tells the story of the killer from the movie X. Both great movies. Pearl was really good. It's much more of a slow burn than X was, but I liked it. It's cool, Wayne, the style of this movie. So X was like a 70s style slasher where Pearl takes place in 1918, and the style of the film is like a 1950s like Warner Brothers picture. The stars' names wipe across the screen. It's got that very big music and stuff like that, and then the credits end with her stabbing a goose through the neck with a pitchfork. So it's like it crescendos to this like like a Wizard of Oz type opening, and then she's like, murder.
I'm good with that. I don't like murder chickens, so. Yeah. So, are you telling me that X was going to give it to you?
Yes.
Give it to
you? More ways than one, because it is about a group of people shooting a porno that then started getting murdered.
Oh, hello.
I highly recommend both of them. Pearl is now in theaters. X, you could rent or purchase streaming wise or on Blu-ray, which I own the Blu-ray of it. So yeah, that's what I have watched this week. Still making my way through Shameless. I haven't watched it probably in a week or two. But I made it through like 3.5 seasons in like a week and a half. So
right, and then you hit that spot where it's just like, okay,
it's just a break,
Maybe I'll be back. Maybe.
Yeah, right. No, I'll get back to it. I will, but it just needed a break.
Well, that's how it was a few months ago. I was like powering through The Walking Dead, and I hit the same spot, and I'm like, just don't care anymore. I don't. It's just I went to full Tommy Lee Jones. I don't care.
Yeah, great. It's a great line there from Fugitive. All right. So news and notes for the week. Christian Slater announced as being in the Willow TV series. He will be playing a friend of Val Kilmer's character from the original film, obviously because Val Kilmer too, sick to return to that role. Too much action and stuff involved. So great that they added Christian Slater, and him and Val have worked together quite a bit. So I'm sure there's some friendship stuff going on between that. All right. The Thunderbolts cast, which is the villain movie for the MCU, has been announced. Will consist of Yelena from Black Widow, Red Guardian from Black Widow, Bucky, obviously, Ghost from Ant-Man 2, Taskmaster also from Black Widow, U.S. Agent and Valentina, who are both in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm sure there'll be lots of other characters that pop up in them as well. Shira Haas from Unorthodox on Netflix, which is a miniseries I highly recommend, has been cast as Israeli superhero Sabra, and Tim Blake Nelson's The Leader will finally return in Captain America 4. So both of them will be in Captain America 4. Tim Blake Nelson played the leader in Edward Norton's The Incredible Hulk. They've slowly brought a couple characters from that one over. Everyone always wondered what would happen to the leader, so I guess we're going to get to find out now. Q Hawaii Kwong, for Data from the Goonies and all Short Round from Indiana Jones, has joined Loki Season 2 just after coming back to acting with Everything Everywhere All at Once. A documentary about George A. Romero's Resident Evil film that never was is in the works. Sofia Coppola cast Kaylee Spaney and Jacob Elordi in her Priscilla Presley biopic. A24 has greenlit Maxine, which is Ty West's third film in the X trilogy, which I was just talking about. They announced this ahead of the release of Pearl. At the very end of Pearl, there's a teaser trailer for Maxine. So that'll be a sequel to X. Ryan Coogler, Black Panther and Creed, in talks to direct Avengers Secret Wars. Jeff Loveness of Rick and Morty fame and the upcoming Marvel film Ant-Man 3 has been brought on board to write Avengers The King Dynasty. Skydance scraps Matthew McConaughey's soccer film Dallas Sting 6 weeks before production was scheduled to start due to some unknown disturbing allegations about the real-life characters the film was based on. David Harbour to star in Gran Turismo adaptation from director Neil Blomkamp. Orlando Bloom has also joined him in the casts. Blade Runner 2099, a live-action limited series sequel to 2049, will be produced by Ridley Scott and is heading to Prime Video television. Disney officially removes Patty Jenkins' Star Wars Rogue Squadron film from the release schedule, so who knows what that means. But at this point in time, it is no longer being made. Paul Greengrass to direct Stephen King's fairy tale adaptation. The name of the book is called Fairy Tale, so it's not saying he's adapting a Stephen King fairy tale. Jeremy Allen White from The Bear and Shameless is going to star with Zac Efron and Harris Dickinson in the movie The Iron Claw from A24 Films, which will be based on the wrestling brothers, the Von Erichs, which had a very tragic history in the WWE. Very interested in that. Tanner Stein and Kaylee Bryant will star in supernatural horror film Spin the Bottle. Ali Larder and Justin Long have signed on in supporting roles. Jason Lee Howden is making Deathgasm 2 with a comic book companion coming out in December that'll put the 1 and 2 together, I presume. Fievel Stewart from Uma and Atypical will star in a new horror film, Wake, about an actress who is desperate to star in a horror film remake that she reaches out to the original star only to find out she is now a recluse and meeting her becomes a nightmare. This is big news right here, everybody. Keanu Reeves has been asking for it, and Warner Brothers has finally greenlit Constantine 2. Francis Lawrence will come back to direct the film. Very interesting because the DC extended universe or whatever is just all over the fucking place now. So it'll be interesting to see. There's rumors that NBC Universal wants to buy Warner Brothers. So if that happens, will this movie even get to be made? Who knows? All right, so Francis Lawrence is keeping busy as he has also been announced as the director of the Sublime biopic. Due to Cobra Kai's success, a new Karate Kid film is on the way in 2024. No word on what it will be about. Craven the Hunter moved from January 2023 to October 2023. Robert Patrick joins Yellowstone prequel 1923. And then Rajon Jean Page and Glenn Powell to star in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid Amazon Prime series. All right. Release is coming up. Big Shot Season 2 with John Stamos debuts on Disney Plus October 12th. Marvel's Werewolf by Night Halloween special, which has a great fucking trailer out right now, starts streaming October 7th. The Santa Clauses, Tim Allen's Santa Claus TV series, premieres on Disney Plus November 16th. Babylon from director Damien Chazelle and starring Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Tobey Maguire, Samara Weaving, Flea, Eric Roberts, PJ Byrne, Gene Smart, and newcomer Diego Calva hits limited theaters on Christmas and everywhere January 6, 2023. Bring It On, Cheer or Die will premiere on Sci-Fi October 8th. And yes, everybody, it is a sequel to the Bring It On films, but it is a slasher film. Chucky Season 2 debuts on Sci-Fi October 5th. Grimcutty, a new horror film, hits Hulu October 10th. And The Wonder with Florence Pugh hits Netflix November 16th. Deaths this week: PNB Rock, rapper, shot dead at 30. Jean-Luc Godard, director and pioneer of French New Wave film movement, dead at 91. Christopher Jodorowsky, actor and son of cult filmmaker Alejandro Jodorowsky, dead at 57. And then Henry Silva, who was was in Alligator, which I just watched, and Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai, and many more other films, just passed away at the age of 95. Obviously, I think we can presume that he died of old age. All right, everybody, that is our show for this week. A lot of good stuff we talked about that I want you guys to go watch. So if you haven't seen a bunch of the ones I mentioned, please go watch them. Wayne, any final thoughts?
It was a very fun conversation today. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. It's been another episode of Now Showing with Mike and Wayne.
Reagan, the actor?
Hasta la vista,
baby. Hey, everybody, we're all gonna get laid.